was The Nest, the newest movie featuring Carrie Coon and Jude Law in the starring roles, directed by Sean Durkin. Was this a hit for you?
Uh, it's also like an incomplete for me.
Okay.
Um, I think The Nest starts really, really strong, but also fizzled out a little bit, unfortunately. But you can also tell that there's just more competent filmmaking at the helm,
Mhm.
right? Like no shots at Iannucci, but Sean Durkin. This is only his second film. His first film from almost 10 years ago was a big Sundance hit, and this also premiered. Nest also premiered Sundance earlier this year. But just from the jump with the Nest, you watch like those camera pans, you notice the like piano score drops at times, and you can tell there's a lot of like care going into it. And then, of course, it's anchored by two, I think, really committed performances from Law
Mhm.
and Kuhn. But it was also a plot that didn't surprise me nearly as much as I expected, and kind of just fizzled out, and almost bit off more than it could chew. There's a lot of side plots in the Nest, surprisingly. Um, but I liked enough of it, I guess. What do you think?
I think the part that's going to stick with me the most is the visual style of this. There's so many tight shots from such unique angles,
Mhm.
um, and there's so much being communicated by the actors who aren't doing the speaking in this. I think specifically Carrie Coon in this puts on like a display in terms of her reactions to things, the way that she's responding to some of the bullshit that Jude Law's character is kind of putting out there,
Yeah.
seeing her face. Like, I forgot what was exactly happening. I think they were at like a dinner party, like kind of like halfway through the movie, and he's like one of his like people coworkers giving a toast, and I think
Mhm.
she realized like some
Yeah.
lie he had told, and her
That was really well
face
done.
just like slowly like melting was like devastating, and
Yeah.
I was like,
The
this is
keys there
Carrie
too were so
Coon,
good.
like, yeah, it's like Carrie Coon, like totally like showing out. Or like the scene with Jude Law with the cabbie near the end of the movie when the cabbie's
Mhm.
like talking about what we as what people being parents need to do, which is try to give a better life. And then he's like, what do you want? What do you want? Then he was like, I don't know. And like, just like that scene was so well shot. And like, the cabbie not having a face that you can see in the shadows, and like really like being this like it's metaphorical, but like I think it done in a tasteful, not super over the top way was really, really strong. Like this confrontation of himself almost. So I found some of those moments really good, but overall, I think I found myself feeling a little bit like listless, and almost like expecting something else to happen. Like it had almost kind of like a horror dread vibe to it at points. And I was like, is there something else going on here? Like, am I missing something? Left me a bit confused at times.
Yeah, I feel like the audience is a little ahead of the characters at the end of the day, right? Like you realize quickly it's a marriage that's going to fall apart, and the big main source of that is going to be Jude Law is playing a character that just spins a yarn,
Yep.
and it's done in his whole life, evidently.
Pathological liar.
Yeah, and you see the latest yarn be spun before Carrie Coon's character and other people like actually realize it and openly acknowledge it. So it I f- it felt too simple at the end of the day for me. And you know, there's some really good scenes between Carrie Coon and Jude Law, but I was kind of expecting like a true like Peter, the way like Scarlett Johansson, Adam Driver fight in Marriage Story, for example. There was no like actual big blow up moment.
Mhm.
Like the separation kind of happens almost mutedly at dinner when she just walks off, and then you get that great scene where she's just dancing her uh, anger away in the
Yeah.
bar by herself, right? But um, yeah, it just felt like there was like kind of a spark that we lost at the end of the second act.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think there's a lot of like undertones and subtle messages that are trying to be portrayed by Durkin here, and I think the one that fell most flat for me is whatever was going on with the son, who almost feels
Mhm.
like an afterthought in a
Uh,
lot of this. Um,
it's barely in
but
the movie.
then at times feels like he's playing like such a crucial avatar in this. Like um, they have this moment where near the end, Carrie Coon comes home and the house is a mess, and he's like locked in this room, and it's just like, yeah, I locked myself in because there was a party going on. It's like, okay, like what am I supposed to? And then he's the one that's running out and like consoling his mom, and she's like digging up a dead horse. It just kind of felt very like the son wasn't. I didn't get the purpose of what they were trying to say, what he was going through. I think the oldest daughter made a little bit more sense, but that was, Samantha's storyline, like side plots were almost, um, I feel like a little too over the top, where she was like getting pretty heavy into drugs, um, and pretty quickly it seems like in their time there. So there's a lot going on, like you said, and I think to varying degrees of effectiveness.
Yeah, it's funny. You think about this, you think about industry, right? And like, if you're not paying attention, you almost don't realize that this movie's a period piece. It's set in the 80s.
Yeah.
And like the lack of internet, the lack of Zoom is very present in like, all the Jude Law's decision making, right? He's like,
Mhm.
we're gonna move the family so I can work at this London firm. And like it's a big deal that they're out at the countryside and not in downtown London, right? And his whole like, like I feel like the first first moment where I was like, "Oh, this guy might just kind of be a schmuck," was when he's like talking about like regulation and how we need more deregulation. It's like you could tell he's a very like singular focused person, and the pontification he does about making your fortune selling like commodities or whatever kind of trader he was. It's like, yeah, this is very like Gordon Gecko esque, like the lionization
Yep.
of Wall Street and the stock market, international writ large. It's like, huh. And yet, like, like, there's really nothing redeeming about Jude Law's character besides the meta nature of the good performance, right? So it's like, again, I think the Nest is just kind of missing something to it, but it's still very watchable because there's two really good performances and it's still well made. Like, when they're at that like really fancy mansion that they move into, and they're all like,
Mhm.
"I fucking hate this house. It's creepy. It's scary." And I'm like, "Oh well." I mean, I live there if you guys don't want to. Like the house looked fucking sick to me.
And Led Zeppelin apparently recorded an album there, so I would definitely at least go and stay a while. But just speaking to the '80s vibe you talked about, I really liked the soundtrack here. You had Shaka Khan, Heart, Psychedelic
Yep.
Furs, The Cure. I mean, really, really choice, and it reminded me that These Dreams by Heart is probably one of like the like OG soft rock Hall of Famers, man. Like, what a fucking jam that is. So, um, the Nest, some good, some bad, little mix in between.